Hello, my name is Jamie Peltier, Planning Supervisor, and the item being presented to the Planning Commission on November 6, 2025 is a zone text amendment initiated by the City of Oxnard relating to accessory dwelling units and other zone text amendments. The project description includes several amendments to the Oxnard City Code, Chapter 16 Zoning Code, all of which are either state-mandated or cleanup items that are minor in nature. The first major part of this zone text amendment is the accessory dwelling unit ordinance, which the state of California requires the local jurisdictions that have adopted an ADU ordinance, such as the City of Oxnard, to remain in compliance with the newest state laws. Otherwise, the city's ordinance is null and void until it is updated with the minimum standards in the law. The second part of the zone text amendment includes adjustments, modifications, other minor revisions to streamline the development process, clarify definitions, remove repetitive language, and consolidate sections, and generally provide consistency within the zoning code. We'll start with the accessory dwelling unit ordinance. This ordinance amendment demonstrates a critical need within the state of California and the city of Oxnard. ADUs have become an important part of the housing inventory for both the state and the city. Sweeping ADU reforms from the state began in 2016 when the city established an ordinance aligned with those legislative updates. Since then, the city's ordinance has been updated every couple of years, starting in 2016, then 2017, 2019, 2020, 2023, and this proposed amendment in 2025, which won't be effective until sometime in 2026. With those reforms in state law, the number of ADUs submitted for review, building permits issued, and the number of constructed ADUs with certificate of occupancies has continued to increase over the years once the state had removed and continues to remove barriers. The table provides data on ADUs over the last 3 years in the city of Oxnard, showing well over 500 ADUs that are in the works, under construction, or completed. Since 2023, the state has passed several additional amendments to ADU state law. To summarize those, we have Senate Bill 477, effective in March 2024, which made significant changes to the numbering and the formatting of the government code sections that hold the ADU state law. Assembly Bill 2533, effective in January 2025, addresses the construction of ADUs and junior accessory dwelling units without permits, then prohibiting the city from denying any of those permits because they were constructed without permits to begin with prior to January 1, 2020, unless there's some significant health and safety issue that would then pose an issue with providing permits for those ADUs or JADUs. SB 1211, effective January 1, 2025, changed the parking standards, prohibiting a city from requiring replacement parking when an uncovered garage, carport, or any other parking spot is demolished or replaced with an ADU. No parking would then have to be provided in the place of removing those parking spaces for an ADU. SB 1211 also increased the number of detached ADUs permitted on an existing multifamily property, which would allow up to 8 detached ADUs, and for proposed multifamily developments, it remains at 2 new detached proposed ADUs. AB 1154, effective this upcoming year on January 1, 2026, removes the owner occupancy requirement for junior accessory dwelling units, which are essentially ADUs that are entirely within the single family dwelling unit. Previously, the law required the owner of the property to occupy the single family residence or the JADU, and a covenant on the property was required by the city prior to issuing building permits. The legislation changed that if a JADU has independent sanitation facilities, that a covenant is no longer required. And lastly, SB 543, also effective January 1, 2026, includes several modifications to the law. First, there's a new 15-day review timeframe per each submittal for all the reviewers, such as fire department, planning department, building department. Requires the city to submit an ordinance to the state within 60 days after adoption, includes specific language that ADU and JADU square footage is calculated using interior livable space only, and again renumbers portions of the government code sections. All of these state laws are included in the draft ordinance. With accessory dwelling unit ordinance, the proposed ordinance replaces and repeals the previous ordinance because there were a significant number of state laws that were passed and formatting and numbering changes that occurred that changed the flow and layout of the existing ordinance, thus requiring a new format and layout as proposed in the attachment and exhibit. The development standards, however, remain consistent with those that are from state law and the residential zoning code standards. There are no new additional standards that are proposed with this ordinance. City staff is meeting an ongoing goal of Program 6 of the 2021-2029 housing element that essentially requires the city to update the zoning code with past laws. The second part of the proposed zone text amendment includes streamlining efforts for single-family residential development, both for conventional and manufactured construction types. The zoning code currently requires a discretionary review of a single-family residential structure, even when it's meeting all the applicable zoning requirements, requiring a development design review permit, which is heard and approved by the community development director at a public hearing. The amendment proposes to exempt single-family dwelling units from a development design review permit and would then permit them with a building permit while still requiring and applying all the relevant zoning code standards. The land use matrix in the residential zone section and the development design review permit section have been modified with the exemption language. This is all in an effort to streamline the permit process for housing development. The last two slides include cleanup items and the definitions, residential zones, parking, and modification process sections of the zoning code. The first we'll talk about is the definitions. This includes a lot of little cleanup items and minor modifications, particularly around clarifications around lot configuration and lot lines and yards. These updates will help interpretations among zoning and the development applicant teams that use these definitions on the regular. Other definitions that are updated include accessory buildings, accessory structure, patio. Again, these have minor modifications to them to clarify certain standards within the zoning code. The second part of this slide is the residential zone update. There have been modifications to remove references to second dwelling unit, which is now just an accessory dwelling unit, removes repetitive permit process language, removes outdated uses, and includes more objective architectural standards. These modifications do not alter the basic development standards, the zoning, or any permitting requirements. The parking section is a cleanup item related to ADUs and removes and replaces the parking standards from the parking section of the code to the accessory dwelling unit section of the code, simply to remove repetitive language and referencing one section of the code. And lastly, the final amendment is proposed mostly for internal consistency purposes. Currently in the zoning code, the modification process indicates it's limited to modifications to special use permits, whereas staff's practice allows for modifications to other entitlements such as development design review permits or site plan review permits. The proposed wording amends the modification section from using special use permit and is more encompassing using planning permits instead. This is to ensure certainty when using the zoning code that there is a process for modifying a planning entitlement, whether it's a site plan review, special use permit, etc. And it also does not change the modification process for major or minor change. These zone text amendments are city initiated and not necessarily related to state mandates such as the accessory dwelling unit. These again are cleanup items for staff and the public to use. The zone text amendment demonstrates consistency with the general plan and housing element, mostly by encouraging future development that is diverse, compact, consistent, well-designed, and with a streamlined process. The zone text amendment as proposed meets a lot of the general plan goals and policies as seen on the screen. The proposed project is exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA, pursuant to Section 15061B3, known as the General Rule or Common Sense Exemption. There are no physical development related to the proposed project, and a notice of exemption will be filed, which is attached to the staff report. The recommendation is that the Planning Commission review and provide comments on the proposed amendments. Recommend that the City Council find the project be categorically exempt from CEQA and adopt the Resolution 25, recommending that the City Council adopt the zone text amendment and draft ordinances subject to certain findings. Thank you.